Welcome to Small Business Saturday.
Welcome to Small Business Saturday's video series with your host and my husband.
And my dad, Aaron Montgomery.
Join the conversation.
Let's talk some business.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And hopefully everybody's having a great Saturday. I am excited to be tuning in and hopefully got some folks joining us this morning to ask some questions. Going to be doing a sublimation question and answer today. My friends over at A&E Magazine sent me some questions that they wanted me to answer that they'll be posting in their e-newsletters. And so I wanted to answer them here first to kind of get the thoughts out and get the ideas flowing so I could turn those into a great opportunity. Good morning, Teresa. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining me. I know you had mentioned that when I do it earlier, it's going to be a struggle, but a little later this morning, so I'm glad you could be here. So first, before I get started, I wanted to give a quick shout out. I got a new mug that I think perfectly helps me keep myself in line here. It says, if you're going to act like a turd, go lay in the yard. It's from my friends over at MB Mugs, EMBEE Mugs. And Mary over there, I had an opportunity to get my hands on an extra mug. So thanks so much for my new mug. Sublimated mug too. So even cooler. So let's dive in here. Let's start off with the first question that A&E sent me. And if you guys have questions or comments or other things like that, and sorry, just checking out what's going on. Another quick shout out, I guess, actually is worth mentioning here. My beautiful, lovely, and talented wife is actually helping me produce my show. She's right to my left here. I'm actually touching her shoulder right now. So we're trying something new to have a little bit more fun here. So we'll see how it goes. It's going great. You're welcome, Teresa. Thanks for joining me this morning. All right. So what are some out-of-the-box substrates to sublimate? I think this is a really fun question because I think what I've noticed in my time in sublimation is the more I think about it and the more I look around, sublimation's everywhere and you don't even really know it or realize that that's been sublimated until you take a closer look at it. A couple examples of this would be Halloween costumes. If you look at those and you take a peek, a lot of times they're kind of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I wore last year. It's just kind of this foam piece, but it's been sublimated. And so that's a sublimation piece that we wouldn't even think about. As I mentioned, my wife's to my left here. And if I were to go through her closet, way more stuff in there is sublimated than you might realize. A lot of the flower print blouses that she owns, it looks really great on her. She just got a whole bunch of new stuff from doing some Amazon shopping, and a good chunk of it came in from overseas, and it's sublimated. So you got a ton of stuff going on there in the fashion world with sublimation, and then textiles like sports jerseys and other cut and sew kind of pieces. For years, cycling jerseys have been sublimated for a long time. Soccer jerseys, World Cup's going on right now. All of those jerseys that they're wearing, the colorful, bright jerseys they're wearing are sublimated. So it's everywhere when we think about that. But that's from a textile perspective. So, we're talking about A&E Magazine, Awards and Engraving Magazine here. So what about some other non-textile things? I found that it's being used in parts and pieces of certain products that people want to personalize or customize. Some really interesting stuff that I've seen sublimated are like inlays for gun stocks. You get a lot of engraving and carving and things like that going on in the show pieces for guns. But you're also starting to see some more sublimation pieces be used for different parts and pieces to say, hey, this is my gun, or whatever the case may be. So you got stuff there. Gas pump advertising. Starting to see a lot more of that, where it's not just the plastic piece with the paper inserted inside of it, but the actual pump itself is a sublimated piece. Another cool piece that I'm starting to see a lot more around, you're starting to see different restaurants have tables that are sublimated. So they've got advertising built right into their table, and so that you're starting to see a lot more of that kind of thing. So there's some really cool stuff going on with sublimation in general, and if you can dream it, you can probably find a way to sublimate onto it. But when we talk about actual products that you can go out there and purchase and buy and sublimate yourself today, a few of the most out of the box, because air quotes there, out of the box stuff that I've been seeing and talking with different folks. My friend over at Sawgrass, Jimmy Lamb, has mentioned a few of these things. So stealing a little bit from him, but some other things that I've seen too. Cremation urns, the memorial products side of the business is very sublimation heavy. It's an opportunity to memorialize somebody and remember them after they've passed. Fishing lures. Yes, that's correct. Fishing lures. Now, Jimmy was telling me a little bit more about this in a recent podcast I did with him. So it's going from both sides as a functionality, being able to kind of print some really cool items on it that might attract more fish, but typically more in the promotional products kind of thing. This fishing lure was given to somebody that's, maybe a Cabela's or something like that is going to give away a bunch of fishing lures. Well, they're going to sublimate onto their information, so you'll come back and buy from them. Sunglasses. Yep, that's right. I've seen lots of sunglasses being sublimated. Now that requires some special kind of equipment, but it's definitely available out there, where you have kind of a 3D vacuum style press and a jig that keeps those sunglasses in place. And then you kind of put everything together after they've been decorated, and a great promotional products kind of item. Here's a wild one: toilet seats. Yep, that's true. Toilet seats. I've seen them sublimated. And so, advertising opportunity, you're going to see it everywhere. And then I've also seen like an actual knee brace. And this was something that Jimmy was talking about. And so I actually went out and did some research and found it and saw it. And yeah, they're actually putting, different themes on the top of knee braces. But this is actually going to even further along down the road, so as my research took me into these knee braces, for people, maybe, like I said, it was a patriotic theme. So maybe it was a veteran that had a need to wear a knee brace after an injury sustained. But it's even going further than that, where people are starting to make prosthetics and decorating those prosthetics to mean something to the people that are forced to wear those things. So really cool stuff. Those are some out of the box things. So that's question number one. Where do you get some nice urns? Teresa says, I have the boxed ones, but they have some really nice ones out there, but they're not subbed. Teresa, the ones that I've seen that are not just the boxes are typically vacuum pressed. Let's see, the last place that I saw them available was LRI up in Chicago. And I'm not sure, it's been a little while since I've seen those, but they're kind of more of a jar kind of situation. So I'll do a little bit more research and see if I can find a few more places too, Teresa. So thanks for the question. All right, so that's question number one. Let's cover question number two. How can all over sublimation be applied to promotional products? All over sublimation, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, would be a garment like a t-shirt. Now I'm wearing a screen printed shirt today, but a t-shirt that's been completely decorated top to bottom, inside and out. And to me, the biggest thing that sets, when you start talking about the promotional products world, the biggest thing to me is that by doing all over shirts, it's going to set you apart. The promotional products world, writing instruments are the number one product being sold in promotional products, but not very far behind and gaining each year are shirts. So you think about that, a huge industry like promotional products, and shirts are the number two available product that people are offering. So how are you going to set yourself apart from the millions and millions, if not billions, of shirts being sold? And to me, an all over decorated shirt is how you set yourself apart. It's unique. You don't see that as often. It gives you so much more canvas area to pass the message. So I think that's a big way to break into promotional products, if you have the ability to do all over garments. And then the important part there is just to change your mindset. So a lot of times when you are dealing with promotional products, the thing that needs to be talked about is the cost per impression. Because you think about a promotional products, it's something that somebody's wearing or having out there that's going to remind them about the brand. pass me that pen. Sorry. So we talked about writing instruments. Sublimated pen here that's got 2 regular guys on it. Again, how many times is somebody going to see this before it ends up in the trash? Well, a t-shirt that's just been screen printed or maybe even a cheaper transfer kind of product, it's not going to have very many impressions. People aren't going to wear it as often. But if they have a really cool, nice, subtle, all over design that's unique, and with sublimation, because it lasts forever, they're going to have it and wear it for a very long time. So your cost per impression, so maybe that all over shirt costs the end user person that's buying it $20, $30, $40, whatever the price may be, compared to $5, $10, $15 for a different kind of shirt. But that cost per impression is going to be much less because they're going to wear it more often. It's going to last a lot longer, and it's going to provide greater value to the brand that's trying to get their name out there. So those are some of the things with what we can do with all over. Some other things to think about when we're doing these all over for the promotional word. Again, like I just mentioned, make sure that the design is very subtle and not too loud. People aren't going to wear the shirts that are super loud and crazy as much. In a general sense, there certainly are people that love that, and there are places where that works, but you want people wearing these shirts all day, everywhere they go. So design's nice and subtle. Make sure to factor in the smiles. For those of you new to sublimation, smiles are what we call the defect areas, or the areas where maybe the collar doesn't get quite the even press, or under the arms where things bunch up a little bit. And those smiles need to be kind of prepared for. So you want to make nice light areas, not dark solid colors in those areas where things might look a little off. So design those into them and make it appeal to the masses. And again, like I mentioned, because they're going to be permanent, that ink's going to be there as long as that shirt's there. Sell to that fact. It's going to be much cheaper in the long run, because that their customers will be able to have them for the life of how long that shirt stays together, which is hopefully a very long time. All right. So any questions there? Any things that I can answer for you on all over garments and sublimation? Hey, buddy. my son's popping his head in over here, and my wife over here. Family affair. I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. All right. Well, let's get to question number 3, and then we can get off to the rest of our Saturdays. And number 3, what are the biggest challenges to sublimating hard substrates? I think the biggest challenges that I see, and the things that I've kind of worked with in my time doing sublimation, is making sure you get the proper times and temperatures. A lot of times people want to go to a supplier and say, tell me how to decorate that. And that's fine. But the supplier's kind of in a little bit of a catch-22, because there's a lot of things that go into that they can't control. So they're going to give you some averages. And if you just go out and go, okay, I'm going to do everything at 400 for 60 seconds, you're gonna get some stuff that works great. You're gonna get some stuff that's crappy, and you're gonna ruin a bunch of stuff because you're just going off of what some supplier told you. But the thing about that is everybody's environment's a little bit different. The inks that you use, your heat press, it may say 400, but maybe it's 390. The humidity that you're dealing with, the moisture that's going on between that transfer of the gas onto that substrate, are all going to be very different. And that's something that a supplier won't know or won't be able to tell you about your inks and your environment, stuff like that. So to me, the most important thing to do is to do a ton of testing, do as much testing as you can, and pick some products. So if you're a sublimator out there and you say, I'm going to do everything for everybody, well, okay, but you got to factor in the fact that you're going to have to get that product dialed in. So maybe you want to bring your offering down and have a smaller offering, and make sure that you can really hammer those things home, and be really good at them, and have it nailed so you get the exact same thing every time. And the way to do that is to make sure that you're testing, continuing to test. The summer might be different than the winter, so understand the ebbs and flows of how those things go. You're logging those tests very specifically, pressure, times, temperatures, what you did differently, how many blowout sheets in between, et cetera, so that way you can make sure that you repeat that over and over again. I got a comment here. I love hard substrates. Use a template and they will always be perfect. The correct time and temp, of course, as well. Excellent. Yep. Perfect point, Teresa. Your template is going to make a big difference in the way everything gets laid out and how that's done. So, that's a big thing. Make sure you get those proper times and temps. The suppliers can give you a pretty good starting point for a lot of their items, but your ink is going to be different than their ink, and your environment's going to be different than their environment. And so there's a lot more science that goes into this, and it's on you, the decorator, to really dial it in and provide a quality product to your customer. The next thing to deal with, and we want to make sure we understand, is moisture. Moisture in your transfers. So basically what's happening is the heat is causing that ink to turn into a gas. That ink is a water-based ink, so we've got to get past the moisture and get into the gas phase and on a hard surface. So when I'm doing a garment or a shirt or a mouse pad, all those little holes in the fabric, that gets that moisture moving out of the way. But when I'm going on to a hard surface item, maybe I'm doing a big photo panel or something like that, that aluminum piece doesn't allow that water to kind of evaporate. So a lot of times we can have kind of an edge effect. If you've ever had a transfer and you've got little kind of jaggies on the edge and you wonder where that's coming from, what's happening is the moisture is pushing out to those edges and then stopping at those edges, and it's boiling. The water's actually boiling, and so it's causing the transfer on those edges to not really be clean, and therefore you're going to have those funky edges. So to get rid of those things, use blowout sheets. You can pre-press your substrates and do some of those things. You want to try to get your humidity down as much as you can. So one thing that I've heard and recommend, and I've seen people use with success, is to take and put their transfers in the freezer. That'll suck a lot of the moisture out of it. It may be a little not production friendly all the time. So pre-pressing your substrates is probably the best way to do it. And then making sure that you have a blowout sheet above and below your transfers, because that sheet of paper will also draw that moisture out. A lot of folks that do a lot of high-end kind of photo panels, they'll actually use a piece of polyester there too to also help kind of get some of that moisture away from the edges and out off of it. So, and then just, try to control the humidity as best you can in your production environment. The next thing that I've come up with here, and there may be a comment or, okay, great. Martha, good morning. Hello, how are you? Great to see you this morning. All right. Moisture. We talked about that. The next thing I want to talk about is to tape or not to tape. And this is can be a little bit of a challenge. Most hard surface stuff, you definitely want to tape down. That's my opinion. And, those substrates aren't always the cheapest. And when your heat press opens up, things tend to shift. And so if your transfer is not taped down, it's going to shift too, and it's going to cause some ghosting. But there are certain things that you can't tape. And an awards plaque, for example, you cannot tape that because you put that heat tape on the edges, those nice clean black edges, and then you try to pull those off, you just ruined it, because that tape's going to pull up those edges too. So you got to do some things that with that, I've in the past, when I do awards plaques, I will cut them down as close to the edge as I can get them and still have enough bleed, and then use just the tiniest bit of spray tack. You don't want to get too much because you don't want it to mess with your transfer, but the tiniest bit of spray tack adhesive on there just to get it to stay long enough to get your press open, and so it doesn't move, and then get that sheet off there as quickly as you can. And then the next thing to consider is through the front or through the back. And what that means is when we're transferring, most heat presses, the heat comes from the top and the heat goes down through our transfer onto our product. And that's, 75% of all things go that way. But different substrates actually dissipate or transfer heat differently. So in an aluminum piece, it's actually going to transfer heat very evenly. So you're going to actually want to go through the back of that. So you go heat, product that you're pressing, transfer this way. So you got a question there, I believe. There we go. Teresa says, I use tape on everything except for double-sided ornaments, mouse pads, and puzzles. I use Condi Pro Spray for mouse pads and puzzles. Great, Teresa. What I do on double-sided ornaments is I actually do use some tape, but I don't actually tape it onto the product. I actually make the bottom side a little bit larger as far as my paper goes, and then I cut the top piece almost exactly to the size of the product, maybe just a hair wider so I can get any of the edges. And then I tape the paper onto the paper and press both of them at the same time. And I've had really great success with that. It's not the most ideal, but in a production environment, you can crank out some pretty good amount of ornaments that way. So give that a try. I actually somewhere either have a blog post or something. I'll get it out there where I have some pictures and show all that. So I'll share that soon. All right. So back to the front or the back part. So aluminum, for example, I normally want to do that through the back. The reason to do things through the back where I can do them through the back is that gives much more even heat all the way through. You're not just heating the top, and if there's any, bumps, imperfections, things don't get enough heat sometimes. So if I go through the back, I know that the whole piece is getting up to the temperature that I need to transfer. Plus, it's also a little bit easier to lay those things out. So if I'm doing a bunch of like cell phone inserts, boom, lay them right on the press, close them. Maybe a little bit of tape if you feel comfortable not using tape. I would still use tape in these scenarios. So do those kinds of things. Another thing that I've done a lot through the back that you wouldn't expect are those Sandstone Coasters that you see in cars. A lot of been very popular lately. I've actually found that I get a much cleaner, especially with the darker colors, much cleaner press. Now you have to press for a lot longer, but if you go through the back of those, and I do about 220 seconds at 400 degrees with my environment that I've been working in, go through the back on those. Now, things like hardboard, you can't go through the back because the wood just doesn't transfer the heat well. Really thick pieces of metal doesn't work as well, or you have to do it quite a bit longer. So again, through the back or through the front, you got to test that out, and you got to figure out what works best for you and what you're trying to do. So each substrate is going to be a little bit different. So there we go. Those are the 3 questions that I got. We had some great comments in the middle, so hopefully I was able to answer a few questions there. Any other questions, comments, suggestions, things going on out there? I appreciate you guys checking me out. If you'll head over to my website at aaronmontgomery.info and sign up for my newsletter. I'm working on that. Probably have that going out next weekend, the monthly newsletter that I do. All right. Anything before we call it a day? All right. Well, thank you very much to my wife for helping me out today. She is spending her time. She just got done with boot camp this morning too, and working her butt off. I am so proud of her. All right, guys. Have a great day, and signing off.